I just released an EP that is pretty obscure, and I feel like it deserves a bit more context. Now, if you'd rather just listen to it as is without the context, then it's called Pest Knights and Dung Eaters. You can find it on your favorite platform. And I want to apologize right now that this video will probably be pretty rambly. So this EP consists of 3 songs that are all covers of a band called Philemon Arthur The Dung. They are a duo from Skåne in Sweden, and their earliest recorded track dates back to 1968. The 3 songs that I covered were all released in 1972. That's 49 years ago. It's pretty old. I first found out about them a few months ago from a friend and coworker who knows a lot of the obscure shit. He's been recommending a lot of Heat lately. And you can go listen to them on Spotify right now if you'd want to get your own first impression. But essentially, to describe it, you have 2 dudes, very young in the earliest recorded tracks, I believe 12 and 18 years old, respectively. A little older in the later stuff, obviously. And the instrumentation is either acoustic guitar or accordion. Very rarely both at the same time. You've got vocals from both of the members, and then you have percussion that is very DIY. You've got cookie jars, buckets, and notoriously a heat radiator that is both featured in one of the very few known photos of the guys, as well as in the lyrics of this track. And it is all recorded live on a tape deck, giving some very wild performances. And one of the most interesting things about Philemon Arthur The Dung is that they are anonymous to this day. No one knows who they are. They have only ever appeared in photos either masked or with their faces obscured in some other way. And fun note, just last year in 2022, there was a live show with this band called Anna koka 5 ägg, jag är värd i huset, and they cleared the stage, leaving only 2 members, and spoke briefly about Philemon Arthur The Dung, how their birth years matched those 2 members, and proceeded to play a Philemon Arthur The Dung song, thereby very heavily implying that it's them. I'll link this clip in the description, by the way. And they didn't straight up say that it's them, but they just kind of heavily implied it. I am a bit skeptical. I don't think it sounds that much like them, voice-wise. Of course, they're older now, but just comparing what their voices have sounded like at different years, I'm skeptical. Maybe it's them. Either way, cool piece of trivia. So, what's so special about Philemon Arthur The Dung? Why did I want to cover their music? I think my favorite aspect of the music is that you really got this, fuck it, it's good enough, wrote the entire album in an afternoon kind of vibe. And I mean that in the very best way possible. Like, for example, on this track that's on screen right now, you have the song starting, one of the dudes bursting out laughing, restarting the song, bursting out laughing again, and then starting the song for a 3rd time, and finally getting through it that time. All in the same take, released on the album, and that's just insane to me. And that is such a polar opposite to how I make music. Like, I'll sit there recording section by section, retaking each section. Like, I'll record 20 takes of the same section if I need to, just to get it just right. And same for the production side of things. Like, I'll spend months and months mixing a song, and then it won't even turn out that good. But with these guys, like, whatever is recorded onto the tape is what gets released. There's no more, no less. And with this album, I really tried to channel a bit of that energy. Obviously, the workflows are still completely different. I'm recording digital into a DAW. I'm recording every instrument myself. So it's still spaced out onto different tracks, and it is still, of course, processed a lot more heavily than Philemon Arthur The Dung's music is. But I tried to steer my workflow more in that direction, at least. So, for example, with the vocals I recorded, unless I straight up messed up the lyrics or something, I just used the first and only take that I would record, and you can very much hear that in the album. They are not fantastic polished takes, they are simply what I put down. And there was another interesting factor. For the last month or so, I've had a really bad problem with noise in my recording setup. Like, I straight up can't use my preamp because it's unusable. Here's a little snippet of what it sounds like when I try to use my preamp. Yeah, and that same thing happens when I record guitar or bass. That's very present in the signal. I am still trying to hunt down that issue, probably a ground loop somewhere. I'm ordering some specialty gear to try and battle this. But I did not let that noise issue keep me from making this EP. When I was gonna record the second track of the EP, Min Hund, which is basically a very short song with acoustic guitar and vocals in the original, I decided to do bass tapping instead of acoustic guitar. And as soon as I plugged my bass in and got ready to record, the noise was just overbearing. It was so bad. And I thought, oh no, I'll have to fix this and record later. But then I changed my perspective a little bit and thought, oh, I'm being haunted by the spirit of jank. It's the spirit of Philemon Arthur The Dung here in my studio, and it was almost like a religious experience. So I embraced the "this sounds like shit" vibe, and yeah, you can go listen to the finished track, see just how bad this was. And to lean into that even more, I ended up thinking, oh no, the SM7B sounds too good now. So for that track, I recorded the vocals on my phone. And it sounds terrible. It's the worst production I've ever made, and I love it. It's supposed to be like that. I don't feel like there's any other way I could have covered that song at this point. And yeah, it's just great. And another thing I did to embrace the noise that I was dealing with was I used a fuzz pedal on my guitar tracks, so they really got that chainsaw grungy sound to them, which I was pretty hesitant to at first, but now I think it just fits the vibe, right? And I absolutely see how all of this can sound like excuses. I didn't want to put more effort into it than this. I'm saying it's supposed to sound like shit. But I mean, you can go back and listen to my JoJo album I released a few months ago if you want to hear what it sounds like when I'm not being lazy. That's what I sound like when I'm actually trying my best to sound as good as possible, for better or for worse. You have that stuff from me if that's what you want to hear, but this is its own thing. And of course, I do want to mention that the most recently released track by Philemon Arthur The Dung from 1999, a Bob Hund cover called Reinkarnerad exakt som förut. That one sounds great. It does not sound lo-fi, it's not sloppily performed. Like, I'm not trying to imply that Philemon Arthur The Dung's thing is that they sound like shit. It's rather that was a limitation of the equipment that they had at the time of making those earlier albums. I get that, so their lo-finess is a lot more genuine than mine, but still, the spirit is there, I believe. So yeah, that's pretty much my rant over. If you want to hear me covering super obscure Swedish music from the 70s, then please go ahead. I hope you'll enjoy yourself. You might notice I released this EP under my own given name rather than Billy the Bard 11th. I've only released original music on there before. Technically that means this video shouldn't be here on this channel, but it's my channel. I'll do what I want. Yeah, I think I ranted enough. Thanks for listening. I'll see you soon. Bye. This is Fanta Exotic, by the way. That's as crazy as I go.